Whenever you're ready, don't worry about that. Yeah, she's pressing a button over there.
I've never heard of Race Street in Johnson. No, I've never heard of Johnson.
She looks crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she blinked.
Let's see her tracking it.
That's okay. No, she's okay.
I bring the Glassboro Zoning Board of Adjustment regular business meeting for December 16, 2021 to order. Terry, can you please read the opening statement?
Pursuant to the Open Publics Meeting Act, I hereby announce that adequate notice of this meeting, as required by said act, has been provided by adopting a schedule of regular monthly meetings for the year 2021, which schedule was posted on the Borough Hall Bulletin Board, mailed to the South Jersey newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk.
All rise for a salute to the flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Alice.
Here.
Mr. Moonen.
Here.
Ms. Camiola.
Here.
Mr. Harvey. Mr. Jimenez.
Here.
Mr. Santor.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Melchiori and Mr. Perner have been excused. Mr. Casabun.
Here.
Ms. Adamson. Here.
All right. Mr. Alice, can you swear in the professionals, please?
Well, certainly. I ask each of you to raise your right hand, and do each of you swear affirm testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
Yes.
I do.
All right, that's 2 yeses, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Everybody has a copy of the minutes. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Move the minutes be approved as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. All right, everybody has a copy of all the bills and had a chance to take a look at it. Is there a motion to pay all bills?
Make a motion to pay all bills.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Any incoming and outgoing correspondence?
No, Chairman.
All right. Are there any public comments from the public on any non-agenda item? Nope. All right. Our scheduled applicant is ZB21-06, PVA Investments LLC, 149-151 South Delta Drive, Block 428, Lot 11, Zone Z4. We're here for use variance to allow construction of 2 20-unit apartment buildings in a C4 zone. Sure, perch podium, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Bob DeSanto and I represent the applicant PVA Investments LLC. As you mentioned there, the LLC is the owner of Block 428, Lot 11. It's in the C4 zone. The property is a rectangular shaped property comprising approximately 5.17 acres. Currently, there's a 4-unit occupied apartment building and 2 vacant commercial buildings. The applicant proposes to construct and maintain 2 20-unit apartment buildings comprised of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. The applicant proposes to renovate the existing 4-unit apartment building and remodel the exterior to match the exterior of the two proposed buildings. We seek a D1 and a D2 use variance and seeks 3 bulk variances as pointed out by the professionals. 1 for lot width, 1 for maximum impervious surface, and 1 for combined side yard buffers. We submit to you that special reasons exist for the granting of this use variance. Special reasons, of course, are tied into the purposes of zoning. We believe that Section A of 4052 D2 is involved to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use and development of all lands in a manner that will promote the public health, safety, and general welfare. Also, Section L, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civil design and arrangements. Although the subject property is located in a C4 zone, which does not permit residential housing, the development of the neighborhood over the years, and the testimony will show, a resulting mixture of uses of these neighborhood properties. Applicant's planner will present testimony identifying the uses of the various lots to the right, to the left, and across the street from the subject property, which includes a number of properties where apartments are situated. Applicant will produce testimony demonstrating that 2 of the residential complexes in proximity to the subject property are full with waiting lists, and consequently there appears to be a need for additional rental housing to promote the general health and welfare for reasonably priced housing in the borough. As mentioned above, the current property has an existing 4-unit dwelling together with 2 rather used commercial buildings. As I mentioned, it will be renovated and the exterior will be matched for visual advantages. Applicant also submits that we will demonstrate proof of the negative criteria for the reasons stated previously in support of the positive criteria. The first prong of the negative criteria, that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, is met. The use does not involve any health, welfare, or environmental concerns. The demolition and renovation created an enhanced visual environment, and of course, would not be detrimental to the public good. Satisfying the need for reasonably priced housing in the borough advances the public good, and considering the significant misuse of properties in this area of Delsey Drive, including numerous residential uses, the purposes and intent of the zone plan and zoning ordinance will not be impaired. We have submitted an application together with a concept plan depicting the layout of the proposed project. We understand that if the board were to grant the use variance application, that a site plan application would necessarily be required and will follow. Therefore, we did not address site plan issues in our application. I have 3 witnesses, Mr. Chairman, that I intend to present.
Okay,
May they be sworn?
sure.
Mr. DeVitro, Mr. Amari,
So it's Larry DeVitro, I recognize and
Yes.
know, and who are the other gentlemen, just to have them identify themselves?
and Mr. Duprincio, Diprincio. He's the project architect to address the issues raised regarding the.
And first name is?
Eliseo, E-L-I-S-E-O.
Oh, gotcha, yep, well done, and
And Mr. Pietro Amari, who is the representative of the applicant, one of the owners of the LLC.
so, a principal in the LLC?
Yes, the principal.
And the first name is?
Pietro.
Gotcha. Well, gentlemen, I'm gonna ask each of you to raise your right hand, and do each of you swear or affirm testimony about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
I do.
That's 3 yeses, Mr. Chairman, council, please.
Yes, thank you. I first call Mr. DeVitro.
Okay.
Mr. Alice do I need to qualify Mr. DeVitro?
Well, Mr. DeVitro, formerly a neighbor, still a neighbor, always known to the board. No need to qualify him as a professional land surveyor, professional planner, professional engineer, has appeared before this board in all capacities and is well known to this board. It's that simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to mark as Exhibit A, applicant A, the concept plan that Mr. DeVitro submitted. Mr. DeVitro, would you please explain and summarize the layout of the applicant's proposed project?
Can you tell whether this is on? Are you able to?
Not sure.
Not sure.
Okay, I'll try and speak loud. Good evening, everyone. This is the concept plan that we have submitted for the property. As Mr. DeSanto explained, the property is lot 428, lot 11. It is on the southern part of Delsey Drive in the Borough of Glassboro. It is 5.17 acres. It extends from South Delsey Drive. The property continues all the way back to Race Street, which is a unimproved public right-of-way and residential area beyond that. It's 233.9 feet in width. One of the area variances that we're asking for is a pre-existing condition in the C4 zone. The minimum lot width is 250 feet. And this is their concept of what is proposed. As mentioned, it's in the C4 district. It is also encompassed by the Glassboro Redevelopment Area Plan that was developed per 2005 redevelopment plan. There are existing right now 3 existing buildings. This is the larger building, is the existing apartments. There are 4 apartment units in that. There are 2 existing buildings in this location which are vacant, and they will be raised and removed, so there is no proposal to keep those. There will only be renovation of the existing building to match the architecture. And then we're proposing 2 buildings, 2-story. Each of the buildings would have 20 apartments in it, a mixture of 1 and 2 bedrooms. Mr. DePrenzio will explain the architecture and the mixture of the bedrooms and so forth and how they function. A central single drive off of Delsey Drive back to the parking area, that we would have 95 parking spaces, which would be consistent with the RSIS requirement. And that is generally the proposed project. 44, total of 44 units, 95 parking spaces. The thought and the whole premise of the design is really to create a small cluster community of its own with 44 apartments. We've also designated an area in the rear that would be a graded turf area for open space use by the residents, depending on the occupancy. Once it's built, the developer may put some amenity in there, whether they want it just for baseball, throwing a ball, or put some play equipment for younger children, but that's not determined at this time.
Mr. DeVitro, have you taken photos of the existing conditions of the building?
I have.
May I have this marked Exhibit B?
Well, certainly. And what are you handing up to me?
3 photos of the existing structures. And
3
Mr.
photos?
DeVitro has larger blow-ups of them.
It's called B.
B.
So this will be, let's, what do we mark this? You want to do them collectively, or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Exhibit B are 3 photos of the existing conditions.
We're going to do B1, B2, and B3.
Yes.
And are these for me? You have copies,
Yes, I have
presumably, right?
copies. I
Okay.
have
All right.
additional copies.
Gotcha.
Would you like me to explain? Okay, so on the lower part of my board are the 3 photographs of the existing buildings. This is the 2-story building that is going to remain and be renovated. That has 4 apartment units. These are the 2 garage areas that are vacant right now. Mr. Romero has obviously cleaned them up, but they're not usable and they will be raised and removed. The photos on the second row and up here are residential, single-family residential properties that border the property in question on either side. There are 5 residences, one is across, this is the driveway to the site, and immediately across the street is a single-family residence. So the lower end, or the southern end of Delsey Drive, was a highway corridor over the years. It filled in with residential homes and some scattered commercial uses. It is not heavily commercial in this area, but evidenced on either side, there are 2 residential homes, plus across the street, a single-family residential home.
Let me get those.
Okay.
Have you familiarized yourself with the neighboring properties and the uses?
Yes.
And have you taken photos of those?
I have.
Okay. I can submit this as Exhibit C,
Sure.
1 through 5
And
or
how many do
6.
we have here?
I think 5 or 6.
All right, so we're gonna do the same thing, C1, you know, C2, et cetera.
C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
C 1 through 6, Mr.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, would you describe the neighboring properties and uses using the 6 photographs that you
Sure.
have?
I was going too fast for
Yes.
Mr. DeSanto.
Stay to the script.
The first photo is adjacent to the property, but not immediately across the street, is a residential structure. You can see on the photo, there's a sign that it has an existing 4 apartments and it's for sale. So it's a comparable use to what's on our property, but it's a residential structure. Beyond that is a gasoline service station further north on Delsey Drive. The second photo is across the street from the site is a residential property. There is a business use behind it, but it's not associated with the residential use. The third photo is the next property down, 2 properties down, a single-family detached dwelling. Going on the other side is the properties is adjacent to the property in question, and the second property from the property in question are both single-family dwellings along Delsey Drive. And then the 6th picture is a single-family residential dwelling on the opposite side of Delsey Drive. This is the actual existing driveway onto the property itself. And then the lower photos, as I had described, this is the property in question. This is the 2-story apartment building that's going to remain and be renovated near the entrance of Delsey Drive. The other 2 photos are the existing garage areas that are currently vacant and will be raised with the proposed construction.
Are there multi-unit apartments in the general vicinity?
The one across the street and two or three properties up,
Right.
further north on Delsey Drive.
In your opinion, as a licensed professional planner, are there special reasons to support applicants' application?
Yes, there are.
Would you describe?
So, we're just going to talk about the special reasons
Yes.
for the use variance. Okay. As I had mentioned, the surrounding uses is predominance of residential development that has developed over the years, even though it is zoned C4. The property and the proposed use is compatible and particularly suited for that type of use. Regarding the special reasons, I actually reviewed the Glassboro Master Plan, the Glassboro Redevelopment Plan, and the recently adopted Glassboro Growth Management Plan. Particularly the redevelopment plan, which was adopted in 2005, when establishing that, the borough did a study, an investigative study as to the properties within the redevelopment zone, and they particularly designated areas that were in need of redevelopment. This property is part of the properties that were designated in need of redevelopment. I'll talk to just the redevelopment plan, goals and objectives that the borough adopted. The primary goal of the redevelopment plan is to eliminate those conditions that cause the area to be considered an area in need of redevelopment, i.e. structures that are either substandard, functionally obsolete, vacant, or exert an adverse influence on the area. The revitalization of the area with the inclusion of land uses of appropriate type, scope, and scale to meet the demands of the market area. to stimulate private investment in the redevelopment area by assembling redevelopment sites and assisting as necessary and appropriate to support such redevelopment. The establishment of an economically, environmentally viable area conducive to a wholesome living and working environment and beneficial to the safety, health, morals, and welfare of the community. And then finally, the types of improvements that can serve as a means for expanding urban vitality of the area and developing an attractive and aesthetically pleasing environment for the residents, workers, shoppers, and commuters. They were the goals and objectives of the redevelopment area. They declared in 2005 that this area met the criteria as an area of redevelopment. And we believe that our proposed plan is consistent with those goals. Secondly, I reviewed the Glassboro master plan, and again, looking at their goals and objectives, the Glassboro master plan actually adopted the purposes of zoning as established by the municipal land use law, and specifically states as the objectives and goals, guiding the appropriate use of its lands in a manner which promotes the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, promoting the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment, providing sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of residential, recreational, agricultural, commercial, industrial uses, and open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements, encouraging the location of I'll pass on that one. That was just encouraging transportation routes, which Delsey Drive already exists. Finally, is promoting a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design. Again, the proposed plan that we developed identifies and relates to those purposes of zoning as stipulated by the municipal land use law. And finally, with the borough under the master plan, the borough seeks to achieve a balance of land use involving state-of-the-art light industrial office uses, modern commercial enterprises designed with traditional Glassboro architectural features, and safe housing designed to accommodate the specific needs of all ages of all age and income groups, achieve an attractive physical landscape within the built environment, foster and providing equitable support and caring for all residents, encouraging and enabling residents and others to take pride in Glassboro as a great place to live, work, shop, or play, maintain sensitivity to the environment, create a balance between jobs and housing, provide high quality, adequate services, and promote the general health, safety, and welfare of the borough. Again, and finally, as the goal of the master plan was the character of development, recognize the existing character of development as a means of establishing the type of intensity in future development, shape new growth to be compatible with existing development and consistent with the street system, stormwater management, utility services, etc. Again, the goal for character of development that was specifically qualified or spelled out in the master plan was developing a means of establishing the intensity of development and compatible with the existing areas. Our proposal was the residential use in this sector of Delsey Drive is compatible with the residents that exist there currently.
In your opinion, as a licensed professional planner, can the variance be granted without causing substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the intent and purposes of the zoning plan and the zoning ordinance?
Well, as I cited, consistent with the redevelopment plan, the goals and objectives the borough of Glassboro adopted, as well as the master plan, it would be consistent with their goals and would not be a substantial conflict or detriment to those goals.
Okay. And how about the public good? Would it cause any substantial detriment to the public good by replacing what's there with this project?
No, based on our design, and I have a third rendering, which is the site development rendering. As we've established, we would have a center drive, which would be a channelized traffic, different from what's there now. The design is to provide a community cluster of residential units as a community factor with the parking in between. We're providing buffers on either side from the existing residents. We'll be protecting the natural wetlands in the rear of the environment, and it could be developed or would be developed without detriment to the neighborhood or the public welfare.
Do you wanna reference that as Exhibit D, as a
Yes.
colorized,
Yeah, that should be part of the first Exhibit A. Did we have A1 and 2, John?
well, you just have A1. We can make this A2, which is just a
A2, please,
colorized.
yes, because it's
Right.
part of the same
Get it, sure.
exhibit. I would like to have the Sickles of report dated December 2, 2021 marked as Exhibit D.
All right, oh, I got it. This is D.
Mr. DeVicio, are you familiar with Exhibit D, the Siskel report dated December 2, 2021?
I am.
I direct your attention to the section at the bottom of page 1 entitled Concept Plan. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
All right. It indicates that, item 3 at the top of page 2, the maximum building cover in the zoning data table should be revised to be 40%. Do you agree with the statement?
I do.
Number 4, bulk variances are required for the lot width, existing nonconformity condition, and maximum impervious surface. The applicant should provide testimony. Do you agree with Mr. Cossenbone's statement?
I do.
And we will provide testimony when we address the Remington verdict report because that is the same comment. Number 5, sidewalk is required across the frontage. We're recommending the future site plan include sidewalk. Do you agree with the statement?
We do.
And item 6, approval would be required from NJDEP and NJDOT as part of any future site plan. Will these be addressed at the time of site plan if the board grants the variance?
If the board grants a variance at the time of site plan, yes, applications to both agencies will be required.
Request that the Remington verdict report of December 9, 2021 be marked Exhibit E.
Sure, Exhibit E, thank you.
Mr. DeVicio, are you familiar with this report?
I am.
Okay. I direct your attention to page 1, the description proposal. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
Okay. The report reads, the site is currently occupied by 2 vacant commercial buildings and a 4-unit occupied apartment building. That consistent with your testimony?
It is, yes.
The applicant seeks use variances to construct 2 two-story apartment buildings, 44 units total, and retain 2 existing commercial buildings. Is that statement accurate?
It is not. We
Okay, would
would
you
not,
explain?
the existing commercial buildings are going to be removed.
I next direct your attention to section Roman numeral 2, area and bulk requirements. B, do you see that chart?
I do, yes.
Okay. In the chart, Ms. Adamson notes that lot width 250 required versus 233.92 proposed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And are we requesting a bulk variance for that differential?
We are.
And on what basis?
The basis is a pre-existing conditions. The properties are occupied on either side with residential uses, and the dimension of the property is pre-existing. We would not be able to change it.
Next, it says maximum impervious surface 20% required versus 25.15% proposed. Do you agree that a variance is required?
I do.
And are we requesting one? for the impervious surface?
We are, yes.
And on what basis?
The configuration of the use in the property, and the restriction because of the wetlands has created us to have a more compacted development. To provide adequate parking, we've expanded the parking beyond what the minimum requirement is, and therefore we're exceeding the minimum coverage of 20%.
Does the lot width, existing lot width have any impact on?
Obviously, because of the lot is shallow, less width than the 250 feet would have an impact on that.
Next, in area and bulk requirements chart B, indicates that combined side yard buffers, 50-foot required and 46-foot proposed. Do you see that?
Yes,
You agree that a variance is required,
yes, I do.
and are we requesting one?
We are, yes.
And on what basis?
The ordinance requires a minimum 20-foot side yard setback and an aggregate of 50. We have a total of 46 feet or 48 feet, depending on the architecture, the final architecture, which is shy of the aggregate of 50 feet. So we provided 24 feet of buffer on either side or setback versus the required, satisfying the 20-foot, but not satisfying the aggregate of 50 feet. Because of the width of the pre-existing width of the lot of 233 feet. Otherwise, if it was 250 feet, we would be able to satisfy that setback.
Next, I direct your attention to Exhibit D, page 3, note C1. The property in question has 2 front yards and 2 side yards. Plans should be revised to reflect same. Do you agree with Ms. Adams' comment?
We do. On the overall site plan, we provided for the front setback along Delsey Drive. Because Gray Street is a public street, that is an additional front yard, and we've neglected to show that. The side yards would be on either side, and we're okay, we've been showing those.
I next direct your attention to use variance comments, Roman numeral 3. You see that?
I do.
2A indicates that the use will not injure or detract from the use of the neighboring property. Would you address that comment?
As indicated on the photograph that we had shown or taken of existing conditions, as well as the rendering, which is A2, we're showing the natural conditions on either side of the property, residential structures on either side. Consequently, we would not have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. If anything, we would enhance it with the architectural features and the aesthetic design that was going to be implemented with the proposed project.
Ms. Adams's next comment is that the use will not detract from the character of the neighborhood. Would you address that comment?
Well, for the same reason, I think the comment before was mitigating factors for the use variance. Again, as it's indicated, this section of Delsey Drive, even though it is zoned commercial C4, which is highway business, permitted uses in the highway business zone consist of motor vehicle repair and their parts, car washes, upholstering, vehicular body repair shops, vehicular junkyards, not including vehicular junkyards, vehicle painting or outside stories, retail sales and goods, family daycare, service stations, and other commercial uses, all of which would be much more intense use and imposing on the neighbors because of the longer hours of operation, the longer hours of lighting, and the much more intense traffic generation with commercial retail type of use versus a residential. Residential use, there's a living environment. The lighting would be scaled to the residential. It would not be lighting like a commercial establishment. The landscaping would be an enhancement to the property, and the buffers would be imposed to buffer the adjacent residential homes.
Mr. DeVitro, can I ask you a question? As far as detracting from the character of the neighborhood, you have discussed the location of single-family residential dwellings around this proposed apartment complex, but you really haven't extended, tell us what the uses are extending further down Delcia Drive. In other words, you have the U-Haul, you have the Motel 6, you have service stations. How is the apartment complex going to be compatible with those type uses that are existing there now in terms of location, in terms of synergy with the existing uses around it, noise, traffic?
Well,
I'd like to just drive to that point.
Right, proceeding back north on Delsey Drive is eventually you get into the central business district of Delsey Drive, which is that high street, and that, where the shopping centers are, Boat Boulevard. That is a much more intense commercial use, which is services to the community. As we proceed south on Delsey Drive, you transition into a mixed-use area with a lot of residential. Further south from this property, the residential use gets even more predominant than in this location. Immediately north of this site is a gasoline station. There is the Motel 6 on the same side of Delsey Drive. There is a thrift shop, which I think was a former bowling alley at one time. Those are, again, commercial service uses that service the community where the travelers on Delsey Drive, but are drive-by utilizations. This would be creating, again, a cluster community of residential uses that would be serviced by the community, other commercial uses in that area, but would be compatible with it. I think that's what you're asking.
And is it a pedestrian friendly? How are you going to make this somewhat pedestrian friendly of a community? As far as traffic and congestion and issues with.
I mean, Delsey Drive is generally not a pedestrian friendly area. We will provide sidewalks along the front. If there's public transportation, bus services and so forth, it will be accessible. Other than that, it would be pedestrian friendly within its own environment of having sidewalks and recreation areas as part of the community that's developed there.
And have any traffic impact studies been performed with this? Or has anyone, been in touch with the county as far as this type of use along Delsey Drive?
I'm sorry?
Has anyone been in touch with the county? Has any traffic impact studies been,
No.
conducted?
It's a state highway and it's under the state's jurisdiction, and we will need to get a state highway access permit. As part of a site plan design, we will do a traffic study, be mandated to do a traffic study, but that comes under the jurisdiction of the New Jersey Department of Transportation that will seek that.
And that would be.
Part of that review, as part of a site plan review, we will likewise go before the county. Typically, the county will defer any comments to the jurisdiction having oversight on the area.
And this board would review that as well. Okay, just trying to get into some of the issues. You can keep going.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going with your your discussion.
Okay, I'll pick it up.
Sorry about that. Board, if you can't hear.
We are reviewing Ms. Adamson's comments,
Yeah.
asking for testimony on various points. We're now at 2C. She would like me to address that whether the use of the property adjacent to the area, including this plan, is adequately safeguarded. 2C.
Right. Question is the property adjacent to the area included in the plan adequately safeguarded? The area right now is a natural, with exception to the existing buildings on the property, is undeveloped, naturally wooded area. The proposed development will be a identified signed community plan, that will have its own interior security, will it cause an impact on the neighboring properties? It would not. It would be buffered and separated from the properties. I believe that's the concern with the question.
D would be whether the property is suitable for the intended use.
As I testified, the area is predominance of residential uses on the the sector of Delsey Drive. The proposed use would be a residential use. It would be consistent with the goals and objectives of both the master plan and the zone plan of Glassboro, and more particularly, even more consistent with the redevelopment plan that designated this area as an area in need of redevelopment.
E is whether the use will serve the best interest of the township,
For the
existing
same-
versus proposed.
For the same reasons, it would be taking an area that was underutilized, obsolete, the vacant buildings, removing them, taking the existing apartment building that is existing there today, redeveloping it consistent with a plan for a planned community, and create an investment and a quality of housing for the residents of Glassboro to live with have an opportunity of fair quality housing for the health, safety, and welfare.
F would be whether the use will not adversely affect public sewers facilities such as water, sewer, police, and fire protection.
It would not. The public utility services exist at the site. Public sewer and water would be provided through the development. Review, coordination with the fire department for fire safety and fire hydrant access would be accommodated. Stormwater management is part of a site plan design, but we are mandated to meet the new quality standards for sustainable design with stormwater management. And finally, the wetland area that exists on property would be protected and would have to be meet the state standards with any development and buffers adjacent to the wetlands.
You may have already addressed 2G in your comment, whether the use will adversely affect the drainage facilities in the adjacent neighborhood.
Any proposed development disturbance of the site will have to address stormwater management, collection, and maintain on site. So we would not have a negative impact or adverse impact.
And H would be whether or not the use would adversely affect the safe flow of highway traffic.
Again, we would have a single channelized entranceway at the center of the property that would be subject to design review and approval by New Jersey Department of Transportation.
Thank you, that's all I have, Mr. DeVitro.
I have a question. It looks really tight, and I'm not a fireman. I do not see how a fire engine's gonna be able to get in
Yep.
there and turn around and get to the back if they have to, and then turn around.
Well, we provided, what we've done is the design with a split at this end for parking, typical to any other parking lot, that the fire trucks would be a 24-foot wide drive lane, along with the apartments under today's standards for the multifamily. Mr. Delisio addressed it, but I think we're required to have sprinkler systems, and that would be accommodated for, so be adequate room for fire trucks to pull in, back up, and depart from the property without having a large cul-de-sac turnaround.
If you have two fire trucks on the property,
I'm sorry?
if you have two fire trucks that are needed on the property,
Again,
how do they both get out?
the width.
Our
of the-
fire trucks are rather large, so.
Yeah,
They
right.
don't come just one at a time.
The width of the driveway is 24 foot, which is a typical road, municipal roadway.
Is that
25,
including the
28
car
foot.
space, the space where the cars are parked?
Between the cars.
Between the cars, so there's
the actual
24 between the
drive
cars.
aisle, right.
Okay.
Would be a typical 24, 25 foot wide drive aisle, which would accommodate trucks parking next to one another or passing one another. So, yes, If they were two at the end and they had to back up, they would have to give way to each other to back up and turn around. But other than that, they would have readily be able to access the site, pass one another on site, or park adjacent to one another if there was a fire.
Well, I presume that when you get the site plan,
Site plan.
you would have, your proposed site plan available for review by the fire department here.
Yes.
Exactly.
So there you go.
And we've worked with the fire
Oh,
department
indeed.
numerous times.
It's pretty
Keeping truck
typical,
turning
right?
radiuses and
No
so
matter
forth
what the
to
application
accommodate
is.
them. Yes,
You always wanna get the fire department to sign off.
correct.
Any other questions? Thank you. I'd like to call Mr. DePrenzio, please. Mr. DePrenzio, what is your profession
I'm a registered and licensed architect in the state of New Jersey.
and what is your position with Anchor Point Architecture?
I'm a senior partner and architect.
And how long have you been licensed in New Jersey?
My architectural license is 1999.
Okay. Was Anchor Point engaged by the applicant to prepare plans in connection with this application?
Yes, we were engaged by PVA Investments, yes.
And did you personally prepare the architectural and elevation plans to be submitted to the board tonight?
Yes, I did.
And have you previously testified before land use boards in New Jersey?
Yes, I've testified in front of 43 land use boards with over 120 land use projects.
Okay. Mr.
You
Chairman,
keep track, 43, okay,
I have a
All right.
As a list.
all right, okay. Well, it's certainly welcome, and, we accept Mr. DePrenzio as an architect, able to give testimony as an expert in that regard.
It's my
And you're handing up?
resume
You're handing up a resume,
and
okay.
with the communities I've testified.
All right, great.
Glassboro here at one time with Collision Mac.
Well, there you go, it is absolutely official, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I have the elevation and architectural layout marked Exhibit F, the applicant?
F as in Frank.
F.
F.
F as in Frank.
Okay, well, thank you.
Copies for everyone.
And this will be F1 and F2?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Which one was like F1?
F1 is that, exactly what you have in your hand. F2 is the colorized rendering.
Mr. DePrenzio, would you please describe the architectural layout and the elevation of the building, please?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So, on the new construction side, there'll be two buildings. Each building will have two floors. There's a first floor and a second floor that you'll see on your plans, and that's replicated on both sides of Mr. DeVitro's land dimensions plan. There's 20 units per building, which makes it 40 total new units. It totals 8 two-bedrooms and 32 one-bedrooms. The two bedrooms will be on the ends because they can have additional windows for the larger bedroom size, and the one-bedrooms will be in the middle. The one-bedrooms are right around 702 square feet, and the two-bedroom is right around 1,085 square feet. All units are going to have a patio or deck, 6 feet by 10 feet. The existing building that you've seen before right now has two bedrooms one 3-bedroom, and one 1-bedroom. And the architectural elevations are going to match the design intent that we have for the new building, which I'll talk about in a minute. I think one of the positive things about the way the building code is moving and about this project is that the first floor units in New Jersey now have to be designed under a New Jersey Uniform Construction Code. They accept different codes, and they accept the ANSI code. The ANSI code is a barrier-free subcode. What does that mean? It means the units on the first floor of both sides will have to meet accessible requirements, which are called Type A units. Type A units are excellent for two groups: the people that have mild accessible reasons, those who have mild handicaps, and also senior people that get older, and and have tough time moving around spaces. These units are going to be designed in such a way where the first floor units will be designed in that manner. So you'll have 20 units on this complex designed for that. What does the Type A unit mean under the ANSI subcode? It means that every first floor unit will have an accessible primary entrance, meaning there's no stair towers, there's no group entrances, no one's using other person's entrances. Everyone has their own entrance. So everyone will be coming in their own entrance. Every entrance will be covered, so they'll have covered entries. So when you're opening the door, or if you have a walker, basically you will not be affected by the elements. Each unit has to have an accessible route through the apartment. So on the first floor, every unit, as you come in the front door, you'll be able to move around the space. The code also says that each unit must have one toilet, which is a bathing facility, and meet this accessible code. So the restrooms are larger for someone to walk in, walk right into the shower, and not have to worry about moving around a tub and things like that. The Type A unit also requires that you do not stack washer and dryers on the first floor. So the entire complex, every unit will have a washer and dryer, and those on the first floor will be side by side, so someone can access both sides. Each unit will have an HVAC closet, and the exterior conditioning units will be designed and screened as per the site plan requirement in the future. The 2 bedrooms actually have a laundry room where someone can go into the room itself and utilize the washer and dryer. The entire building will have a utility room on the end, and that's not for the residents, but that's for anything like sprinkler system to come in the building, electrical power to come in the building. They'll be in a small end space on the end of the unit. The front elevation will have cultured stone about 4 feet high, and we also raised the cultured stone in these 2 volumes here to sort of break up the horizontal design. We've also designed some AZAC or party board and batten design here, and we've also used AZAC trim in areas here and here around. All doorways which have columns and trim and windows all have the AZAC trim. It'll have a fiberglass roof, and the height of the building is 34 feet. Mr. DeVitro is correct. Under the new building codes, the building has to be fully sprinklered. And not only that, but we are also designing tenant separation between every unit and around every stair. So every unit will have tenant separation, which will go and extend above into the attic, to forbid any type of fire spread.
Now when you say the buildings have to be sprinkled, are you talking about the 4-unit building too, that you're gonna rehab?
That does not need to be sprinkled, no, but I could look at that.
Just give my heads up, all right.
Okay. The building code does allow 10,200 square feet per floor. We're under that on both floors. The building code does allow a 40-foot height, 3-story building. We're not building a 3-story building, and our building is not 40 feet high. We're 2 stories, and we're 34 feet in height. Overall, a lot of time was taken early on, we're here at a zoning variance, to make sure that these dimensions are as close to reality as possible, so we do not have to come back in front of any boards. I made sure that the floor plans work for type A. These are not off the shelf, these are not something I pulled out of a drawer. This was designed for this complex. And everything from the kitchen being full kitchens, to the elevations. The only thing that may change a hair is maybe the height may get 6 inches shorter, because I tried to leave 2 feet between units for HVAC and sprinklers. That may come down maybe 6 inches, but other than that, what you see here has been designed even further into like the preliminary design phase.
In the fiscal report, Mr. Kosovo indicates on concept plan number 2, the applicant should describe the proposed building, including materials, number of stories, and amenities, including washer, dryer.
Yeah.
You feel you've covered all that?
Yeah, if there's any questions on the elevations, I'll yes.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Are these units gonna have garages?
No,
No garages.
no.
Are there handicap parking spots?
Yes, that'll be part of the site plan.
Thank you.
If I'm correct, during the reading of this material, I see that it is pretty much slated for teachers, professionals, rather than residents. I know she had made mention of residents a couple of times, I said, but during the reading of it, it looks as though that these apartments are just set up for teachers, professionals, if I'm correct.
Mr. Amari will be testifying to that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Well, that's the teaser.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Mr. Amari now. Seat there with the microphone. Mr. Amari, what is your relationship to the applicant PVA?
I'm the owner.
Okay. And are there any other owners?
Yes, there is. My wife, Vera Amari. She's behind.
Okay. What was your purpose in acquiring the subject property?
We purchased the property to rehab the existing 4-unit apartment building and to expand on 40 more units apartment complex.
Okay. The fiscal report, concept plan item 1, Mr. Kosovo notes, clarify the timing of the renovation and usage of the existing apartment building as well as the demolition of the commercial building. Furthermore, confirm if the project would be in phases. First of all, would you clarify the timing of the project and whether it would be in phases?
Right now, we're not going in phases. We're going to start and continue until we finish. So there is no phases. Obviously, we would want to rehab the first 4-unit building that's existing there first, and then do all the infrastructure and everything. As far as, permits, we gotta wait for, state permits and everything. Once they all come in,
That drives the timing of the project.
Correct.
Any estimate from building permit to end, how long that will take?
In reality, I'm hoping 6 months to a year.
Well, you might want to speak to your attorney and your planner about that Department of Transportation, right, and just some of those permits.
Yes.
Could slow things down.
That's your hope, but you're.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Does PVA Investments own and operate other rental property in New Jersey?
Yes, we do.
Would you explain that, briefly explain?
Yeah, we have commercial, we have single-family homes, we have multi-family homes, and we have apartment complexes. We have 2 small apartment complexes. We've been doing it for 25 years. We're getting into it more now in the last 10 years.
What rental market do you plan to target if the board grants your approval tonight?
So middle class, I know you said we specifically says it's not teachers, anybody with, teachers. I know we targeted, let's say, nurses and stuff because the hospital's new, teachers because of the college, but it's open to anybody. I mean, middle class, working class, we don't have no specifics. It's open for, we're not gonna try to do student housing or not, that's why we're looking for, fair market, rentals.
What amount of rent do you propose to charge for the units?
So there's 1 bedroom, 1 bath, we're looking anywhere from 12 to 1,500, and, the 2 bedroom, 2 baths from 16 to 1,800.
And have you determined whether there's a market for this type of apartment development in the borough?
Yes, we've been driving around, Glassboro and calling. A lot of them are fully occupied, the newer buildings. Some of them are less square footage than us and renting for a lot more. So that's why we're playing that, in the middle.
What apartment can you identify for the board? What apartment you're talking
I
about?
have the name in the back. It's at 2,000 for 2 bedroom, 2 bath. You might,
And what complexes are you speaking about, the borough?
The Essex Chase is 2 bedroom, 2 bath is at 2,000. Some of them are at Park Crest is at 1,230 to 1,390 for 1 bedroom, 1 bath. So I mean, this is obviously going to be newer. Everything's as far as washer, dryer, we're giving them all the amenities in the units. Some of them, most of them have washer and dryer hookups and everything. As far as amenities, we're thinking later on in the back green area, a pavilion, a picnic pavilion for play for kids, or people want to cook out or something outside in the back area. That was later on we were going to do in the site plan to see what draws.
Got it. Does PVA Investments intend to continue to own and manage the complex after it's completed?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what would be your personal involvement, you and your wife?
Me and my wife manage day to day. We do have other, people that work with us. As far as we have a small construction company that does all our minor remodels and stuff like that. We have our kids are involved. My son does heating and air conditioning. My one son's studying to be an attorney, and my daughter handles rentals.
Okay. That's all I have of Mr. Amari.
Is there an on-site manager, like every day, or do they have an apartment there of their own?
At this time, we're not planning on that, because we do have someone that works in the area with us, and they're pretty good at getting, the calls if there's an issue or anything.
Well, to our vice chair's point, your other buildings, you say you've got a number of these. Do you typically have an on-site manager or not?
Nope.
So
All
that's
calls
been
come
a little
into
bit
us.
of your business model.
Yes, I mean we're literally on hands. I mean,
No.
so it's we operate it. We have a small construction company that works for us. We're rehabbing 2 houses right now. So.
And how about pickup of school children? Would the bus pull into the apartment complex, or would the bus pull over on Delsey Drive? How would that work?
I think with Larry, we discussed it a little bit on that.
Again, we designed the drive, as far as conceptual plan, the parking area will accommodate a school bus, and likewise to the fire trucks would have the ability to turn around. Usually the school district will dictate where the school buses will pick up children. Easily, if there's adequate room on Delsey Drive to put a bus shelter for children if they were to have to come out to Delsey Drive, again, with a community design, the thinking would be, if there was a school bus, we'd have a school bus shelter, families would walk their children out to the school bus, and they would be picked up at that location. But those details would be worked out by the time we came in for a site plan design.
And would really be driven by what the school demands.
Yeah.
Right,
Correct.
that sort of thing, too.
Correct.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Sorry, right here. Right here.
No, I'm sorry.
Parking for the residents, will it be designated parking, or how will it be if somebody was living there? Like
First come, first serve, where they marked.
Are they designated per unit?
Well, so the parking standards are, there was a standard, it's called the State Residential Site Improvement Standards, and they have a recommended number of parking spaces for a 1 bedroom and recommended parking spaces for a 2 bedroom. For a two-bedroom apartment, they recommend 1.8 spaces. For a one-bedroom, it's 1.2 spaces. Our parking exceeds those numbers, so the presumption is people are gonna park in front of their unit, and there's adequate parking. The additional parking at the rear that we provided would accommodate overflow parking, guests, whatever, but the ability to have parking at or very near their front door, there's plentiful spread of parking across it. So to answer your question in short, typically we would not designate parking per unit, just because it ends up being conflicts with everyone. If they seek their own and they all work together and living in a community of that sort, there's adequate parking.
Thank you.
I have a question here, please.
Yes, sir.
Well, I saw on the plans about where your dumpsters are. People that are handicapped and so forth, that seems to be pretty far for them to walk to throw their trash or anything else they might have. Do you agree, or?
Where are the dumpsters?
That's another site plan consideration.
It's absolutely flexible. When we did the conceptual, we said, okay, trash trucks drive straight into the dumpster and everyone, but if you have access to it.
No, I'm
the way
talking about the
parking lot-
residents. I'm
Right.
talking about the residents. You say
Understood.
handicap. It seems very far for them to leave their facility here. I'm looking at them and get to where the dumpsters are to throw their trash or whatever.
Well-
Everybody has that.
You know, before, and you're gonna address that, but maybe the unasked question is, are you targeting handicapped people? I get the sense that this is just a building standard that you're obliged to meet, so your target audience isn't handicapped people.
Correct.
You will
Correct.
rent to me, for example, an
Yes.
able-bodied
Yes.
person or something like that.
Absolutely.
We're not designing it for disabled persons
Right.
who live there, but we are mandated under the state law to
Meet.
accommodate handicapped accessibility.
Right.
As Mr. DePrenzio explained on the building, on the units and so forth, that's a mandate on the building standards that people have that ability, whether they're handicapped or not. Maybe they choose that. So if you have handicap, obviously, Mr. O'Mara could direct them to a living one of the units that's closer. As a part of the site plan, I don't disagree with you. Maybe the trash dumpster is a great idea. We look at a more central location
Right.
for all the residents, so they're not walking, or
We don't have one.
do they feel that that's a nuisance and that they don't want the dumpster near their apartment? But something we can work out.
Yeah, we just try to
in
put it
detail.
at the farthest point, you know?
Right. Okay.
But I just was afraid that there would be a little confusion
No,
about
it's,
that.
no, it's a very good point, that it's not,
We're not marketing.
it's a mandate that we could accommodate it, but it's not
Right.
intended that it would be for a disabled, community.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, don't
Those
say-
are my three witnesses, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams?
Let me just say one more thing about these.
Okay,
I
this
just-
time I promise to
Excuse
speak
me,
up.
I'm sorry. Mr. DeVitro addressed the board.
Go ahead.
I mean, for clarity on my testimony as far as the opportunities for development and the special reasons for consideration being consistent with what the long-range vision that Glassboro has established in their master plan and so forth. Designating as this redevelopment area doesn't meet all of those standards. Relative to the compatibility with the neighborhood, as it is currently zoned, it is C4. And the alternative uses, which I believe would be a much greater impact on the neighbors, would be some of the permitted uses. One of the uses is permitted as a conditional use is fast food. Gasoline service stations are permitted. I mean, all of those uses are open much longer hours, with cars, motors running, noise coming out of the cars, car washes, a much greater nuisance and non-compatible with the residential neighbors. And I just wanted to clarify that point for the
Okay,
board.
thank you. Ms. Adams?
Okay, so, my letter is dated, December 9th, 2021. And I just wanted to go through the just a little bit more clearly what's allowed in this zone. So the underlying zone, residential apartments are not allowed in the underlying zone, which is the highway and automotive district. But also in the redevelopment area, residential uses are not permitted on the ground level. The redevelopment area, the redevelopment zone is looking for mixed uses, which would be retail uses on the bottom floor, and then if there were residential uses, they would not be on the ground level, they'd be on the second level. But it's predominantly looking for mixed uses. So, the applicant went through the zoning table and, did a nice job with that.
Well, Ms. Abson, may I inquire, and you may or may not know, how long has this property been, I'll use underperforming for lack of any other term? In other words, you're talking about a mixed use, obviously it's not a mixed use, it's not much of anything right now.
That's for the redevelopment.
So how long has it been laying there is not much of anything, if you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, no, you know, and Mr. DeVitro may or may not know.
No, well, the redevelopment plan was adopted in 2005, and that was when the
Oh.
investigation for the need for the redevelopment was considered. And I agree with Ms. Adams saying about the wording, and I guess it's an interpretation. Obviously, when they looked at the redevelopment plan in 2005, that redevelopment included the downtown business district. The inference was stimulating commercial redevelopment in some of the downtown commercial areas, as well as the central business district along Delsey Drive. It talks to mixed uses where pedestrian traffic in downtown mixed use would be appropriate. It doesn't restrict or tell you you cannot have one use versus the other, but that's the inference is the central business district with the redevelopment. The redevelopment plan reaches all the way down on South Delsey Drive, where the mixed use is not as applicable or compatible with the current traffic movement or the uses down there, or for walkable downtown.
Well, I think what you're saying or testifying is that the existing situation was as such in 2005.
Correct.
So the proof of the pudding's in the eating. If it's been that long, then one has to wonder.
One has to wonder.
Right. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Very good point, thank you.
Okay, so, what I was just going through the uses and what's allowed in the zones. And, the applicant went to the zoning table, looking at the use variance comments. I'd like the board to take a look at the compatibility of this proposed use, which is the, apartment complex within this, neighborhood. In other words, along Delsey Drive, you've got automobile service station, you've got, automobile sales, and issues with noise, issues with, pedestrian connectivity to, retail sites, and mostly pedestrian connectivity. So, the board should just determine if this is an appropriate use in this location. Moving through my letter, the applicant did go through most of the issues under section 3, section 4. They did not address any of the issues under section 4, or many of the issues. So, as far as the redevelopment plan with respect to architectural, site amenities, landscaping, and signage, would that be addressed at the site plan?
Yes, I mentioned in my opening that we purposely did not address site plan issues, because if the board were inclined to grant, then we would certainly address all of Ms. Adamson's comments at that time, because I'm assuming the report would be reissued as to those items.
Understood.
Yeah.
Number 3, the parking, we spoke about parking. And, you also clarified that these are not townhouses, these are apartment, this is an apartment complex, so it's not townhouses. So that was our question in number 3. Number 4, per the redevelopment plan, parking lots shall be designed to accommodate and encourage safe and convenient pedestrian and bicycle movement. How does the applicant propose on an overall?
We're familiar with the design standards and in a modern design or current standard design, both sustainable design in landscaping, sustainable design in stormwater management, and in pedestrian-friendly, accessible design, will be incorporated into the site plan. Obviously, the bike craze has picked up since the pandemic. If everyone will follow that, everyone is into biking, and to be contemporary design, will have to have facilities for biking.
If you don't mind, is there a sidewalk that goes the whole way down so that if I leave my apartment and wanna go put the trash in and I'm not moving my car, I'm not walking in the street in between cars?
No.
Is there a sidewalk the whole length down?
If I'm gonna slide this over here, again,
If there isn't, there should
Mr.
be.
Prinzio had spoken about, today's design standards is very much sensitive to handicapped accessibility for all the units. The sidewalks go from here all the way down, or from the entrance always to the back of the project, as well as sidewalks into the open space area on both sides, so.
So you
fully
don't have to walk
sidewalk
in with the cars,
areas,
No.
yes.
you've got walk, okay, cause I didn't
No.
see that mentioned anywhere and, yeah.
I mean,
Walk, roll, or run.
Who can tell what that is? Is it sidewalk going the roof like that?
And how about landscaping and buffering? And these issues are important because these, as far as suitability of this lot for this particular use, the board needs to take a look at whether or not these would be addressed, or could be addressed during site plan. Would the parking lots be placed behind the buildings? Because in this site plan, they're not placed behind the buildings.
the parking would be in front of the buildings due to the geometric configuration. As far as landscaping, I'm familiar with the redevelopment design standards, and again, to be competitive in a marketplace of a new contemporary design complex, landscaping is a critical issue to aesthetics and the quality of life, so that would be part of the site plan.
Well, you also wanna rent these places, so it's gotta look nice.
Yes.
And how about the primary building frontage and orientation shall be toward the street? So you would be
Which I
not
don't-
be
we
able
don't
to
know.
accommodate that, correct? No. In other words, the primary building frontage and orientation shall be towards the street, so here the proposed apartments are not oriented towards the street.
Right, well, again, it is to create a community, a cluster community, not a highway-oriented highway access as other commercial highway-related businesses are. So the intent would not to have them front on the street or front to the street and have the internal privacy of the cluster community.
And number 9 is just, basically, it's about landscape by-lengths. It looks like you're almost in compliance, or you would be.
Right, we would not
That's
be
number
doing
5,
this.
I'm sorry, number 5.
Right.
Number 6, as far as streetscape furniture and improvements, including benches, tables, trash receptacles, bike racks, pedestrian walkways, planters, the applicant would address those at site plan.
All of
Be able
those,
to
yes.
address those. Number 7 is just additional plantings would be required per the redevelopment plan, per the ordinance.
Understood, yes.
Number 8, street trees would be required. Number 9, buffer areas are required along all lot lines that separate a non-residential zoning use from a residential zoning use. So it was your testimony that all of the adjacent properties are residential, is that correct?
That's correct.
And are they single-family residential?
We would establish buffers, segregating or separating the uses between the neighbors and the proposed complex.
And what's the closest distance to both sides, you haven't shown the locations of those single-family dwellings, but what is the approximate distance from the lot lines?
I guess I could, well, we have 25 feet to the property line on either side. The nearest resident on the north side is probably an additional 75 feet from here, and it's forward from any of the proposed building. Where the building is pretty much vacant land to the rear. On the opposite side, the south side, the existing apartment building, there's a single-family residence adjacent to that property, so you're probably looking at 35 to 40 feet separation. As you progress back on the property where the garages are, you probably have another 120 feet separation from the proposed apartment. And as you get to the rear, the property is vacant. The adjacent properties are vacant.
120. So on each side, there's single-family dwellings. Did I get that correct? When I was out
That's
there,
correct.
I wasn't certain if they were
Right.
apartments or single-family detached dwellings. Okay. Number 10 is lighting, so that would be addressed at the site plan. Number 11 is the location of the trash enclosures and the recommendation to provide additional trash enclosures, which would be addressed at the site plan. And number 12, per the redevelopment plan, entrances should be inviting to pedestrians and shall provide shade and weather protection. That would be addressed at the site plan as well. Number 13, for 5 or more dwelling units, the applicant should provide recreational facilities. So your testimony is that you do provide, you do plan to provide some sort of component, maybe play equipment.
On our rendering, we've shown an area to be cleared for that would be accessible to all the residents, and would refer to, when we come in with site plan, and hopefully making a decision of what that amenity would be. But to, again, make a pleasant, attractive living environment for any tenant, in addition to the landscaping, the pedestrian ways, the amenities are an important factor that'll be incorporated.
Number 14 is roof-mounted or ground-braced, basically mechanical units are to be screened. So I realize that is also a site plan issue that would be addressed. You did show the architectural floor plans, correct? Not elevation, but floor plans, correct?
Yes, correct.
And the wetlands in the back, you would need an LOI, which I'm sure you're aware of. Testimony regarding conformance with affordable housing, would any of these be affordable housing units?
We are, yes. You wanna comment on it?
So you will comply.
Yes, I conferred with Mr. Scafidi, the borough solicitor, and he assured me that the borough is compliant to 2025. There are some 300 plus units excess that the borough has. So the question becomes contribution to the fund. And whatever it is, we have to comply with, and that's a matter between the applicant and the borough.
Okay, and that's all, that's the last thing I have. I just wanted to reiterate to the board, we wanna make certain that there's synergy in this neighborhood, so we really need to evaluate whether this apartment, these 2 apartment buildings and the existing apartment buildings is appropriate in this location. It's a very busy area, it's.
That's why they're here, right? That's the whole idea. That's
Could be.
exactly the question. That is the question of the hour.
Mr. Cosmo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have too much in my letter for engineering, since this is just a concept plan at this point. Just through the course of testimony, just about everything has been touched on. I would just maybe ask one question from Mr. Amari as part of my comment number 1. I think this would be best for Mr. Amari. The existing building that would be renovated as part of the overall construction project, it's currently rented now, I understand. Would the unit still be rented and occupied during construction? Do you foresee that? Okay. Okay, then that takes care of something that would be, a potential issue, but if the building's unoccupied, that resolves any type of conflict between residents and the construction project. That was all I had that hadn't been touched on before.
Thank you. I noticed there's some people here from the public. Do I have a motion to open the public portion?
Make a motion to open the public.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright, please come up, be sworn in. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm just gonna ask you, I just ask you to raise your right hand. And do you swear or affirm testimony about to give us true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
I do.
All right, and what's your name?
Dolores Ichabone.
All right, well, Ms. Ichabone, if you'd be so kind, tell us where you live, like your address and where it is in relation to the project. And you could step behind the podium and you have your own little microphone.
I live at 161 to 165 South Delsey Drive. This property and the whole property that you guys are talking about has been in my family since the early 1900s. It was originally a farm.
You're talking about the subject property?
Yes, I am. It's
Okay.
not, it was originally my family farm.
So you're the seller?
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm telling you why
Yeah.
I'm
She's here.
why I'm here.
Oh,
So this area has been passed down through my family to different members of the family. The residence adjacent to it on the south side is my great aunt, who's over 90 years old and has lived in that house her entire life. Married life, sorry. My brother is in the next house over. There's a vacant place that used to be Alexander's Tuxedos. Your pictures are not correct as to where those properties stand. So whoever labeled them doesn't know which properties are which. I'm intimately familiar with this area. I grew up
sorry,
there.
I'm confused. What, do you think we labeled them?
You don't have both of the adjacent properties pictures there.
Oh,
You say you do, but you don't.
okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I'm intimately familiar with this area. I grew up in the house.
well, just show us,
Houses
that
down.
there's the plan right there. You could just, get into it. Well, no, you got a board right there. See that tripod? Put it just like they
You're
did.
gonna make me, you're gonna make me Vanna White.
There you go.
Well, that would
I've always
be a
wanted to be
lot more
Vanna.
rewarding.
Thanks for the opportunity.
No problem. Go
No
ahead.
pay here.
This is adjacent. This is my great aunt's house. This
Okay.
is south. The north house isn't even here. That would be,
Well, no, I guess what I was trying to say is that's the one I wanted you to show on the plan, the big plan, the one that you just covered up.
oh,
You get my
I'm
drift?
sorry.
There you go.
Right, because there
This is
you
my
go.
great aunt's house, right
Ding,
here.
ding, ding.
Okay.
Right.
This is my brother's house.
Mm-hmm.
This house is not even pictured in any of these pictures on here. That's an adjacent property.
Okay,
So whoever did the pictures doesn't know the area as well as they
Okay.
think.
that's fine.
I grew up in the pink house. I'm almost 50 years old, so it's been in my family all that time. And I'm very concerned for many reasons. I have 2 children in the Glassboro High School. The bus situation is horrible already for picking up children on Delsey Drive, and this is gonna add to that. There is no pedestrian traffic, people walk down the road, it's really not safe. And that amount of people adding to what already exists on that road is gonna make, in my opinion, a huge traffic mess. Unless you're planning on putting in a light, so that people can get in and out, cause I try to get in and out of my driveway every day. And it takes me a while to get out. And I'm not as close to the gas station or anything like that. Now, directly across from where they plan to put this is, and nobody bothered to mention this, is a residential home. But behind it is a trucking company. So you have tractor trailers that pull over in the middle of the street when they're not sure where they're going and park there and idle, waiting to get into that trucking company. How is that trucking traffic going to interfere with people pulling in and out of their apartment complex if you have 40, so maybe 80, say 120 extra people coming and going right across the street from a trucking company as far as traffic goes? Let me just get the list. Does Mr., and I don't remember the
Amari.
last name, Mr. Amari, do you manage it right now?
Do I manage it right now? Yeah.
When's the last time you were at the property?
We were there, we sent a person out there to fix a sink. Oh, 2 weeks ago.
Okay, I have pictures from 2 days ago, I did not bring them with me today, but I can get them to you, of the trash around the side of the house, between my aunt's house and their property, as well as around the trash cans that the 4 tenants that live there don't ever clean out or take out of the street. Therefore, if you can't manage the trash for 4 people, how are you gonna manage the trash for 40 units?
So, I think that's a rhetorical question. She's basically saying you're failing to do that, to keep the property
consistent,
in
so
a
Chris-
suitable condition.
So what our intentions were to come here, they're all on, well, 2 of them have leases, 2 are on month-to-month leases. So when you say, yes, I do live an hour away from this property, our whole goal was to come to the board and get these approvals to remodel the thing. Everybody's, the 2 of them are month-to-month. So we sent pictures, she's got pictures that we sent to them, that we have our landscaper that goes out there, cuts the grass, maintains the property. He picks it up, he moves it, I got pictures of it.
I have pictures from 2 days ago.
Yes, and I can't argue with, so
It's a
these,
mess. The
so
side of the
these
house
tenants,
has
so these
never been
tenants,
cleaned up.
we acquired these tenants.
Right, when did
We
you-
acquired, so we acquired these.
But no,
All right,
stop,
no,
stop. This is what we don't allow.
Yeah.
So get back to the podium and just engage the chairman and the board members. And if you have a question, perhaps for one of the professionals or the principal in the LLC, you'll have the chairman inquire of that individual. But I think fundamentally, because let's face it, we do this a little bit, we're here like monthly. What's gonna happen is, if he gets an approval, whomever is in that 4-unit thing, they're toast. I mean,
Okay, but still.
he's gonna get rid of them, and it's gonna get renovated, and then he's gonna charge more rent, and that's what's gonna happen. I mean, that's just the American way.
Yeah.
But your point is well
aunt's
taken,
house is
that
right
what's the
next
big
door,
idea,
and-
you own the place, take care of it.
The dumpsters, you know, that aren't there right now are gonna be right next door. Parking, I agree with you about assigned spaces, because where is overflow parking going to go? You can't park on the side of Delsey Drive.
Oh, there's an extended lot in the back.
How long have you owned the property?
We bought it,
2015.
no, maybe, almost 9 months, 9 months.
9 months ago? Okay.
So a lot of them, so they signed leases to
I know.
the previous owner, so our hands are tied, I can't do nothing.
No, we get it.
We
get
understand,
it,
I
we
know
get
what
it.
predicament you're in, you're fine.
There was also a problem with, I also was concerned about school buses and pedestrians, but you've already covered that. And also, we have issues of drainage in that area. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like Motel 6, and then it's the storage, and then it's the 2 properties owned by the individuals in the back, and then it would be this property. Well, we already get lots of overflow drainage down through, so how are we gonna ensure that with all this impervious places and lack of drainage, that doesn't multiply the problem?
Well, I believe that's being addressed, what, in site plan?
They have an obligation.
obligation, yeah.
If they are given use variance approval, they would have to come back here with a site plan, which means an actual plan of how this thing's gonna get built, and that would have to reflect any number of things, as the chairman was just speaking to, and one of those, and your question, would be drainage, obviously. That is an important part, and that is something these stormwater management regulations get changed, it seems, on a fairly regular basis, and they become more and more and more stringent. Not just about the management of the water, but the purity of the water, how it's discharged back into the environment, the whole thing. They've gotta come up with answers to all those questions, and they do it, there are formulas, and it gets reviewed by our professionals and that sort of thing. But that's an important question, obviously, and they spend a lot of time on that.
So, I guess in the long run, my biggest concern is traffic, pedestrians, and getting in and out of there safely. And the schools, if they're gonna target families with children, cause the school bus wouldn't be able to turn around in there.
Well, they're not targeting families with children, they're just targeting renters, they may or may not have children.
Right.
It's 1 and 2 bedrooms, so,
But
it is what it is.
Alright, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public? Yes, sir. Good news.
Well, hello there. All right, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, please. And do you swear affirm testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
I do.
Great, well, thank you. And may I have your name?
My name is John McHugh.
John McHugh?
Yep, and we own the two properties to the north side.
Well, cool. Would you please tell us your address?
143 and 145 South Bellsboro.
Gotcha. Thank you. Take it away.
I want to, the same thing Dee was saying about the water is the main thing. We get flooded out with the flow of the water down, and like you said, they're gonna have to address that. That's one of the major things. The other thing would be the safety of our properties with that complex being built. You know, sound barriers, making sure that they stay on their end of the, you know, their side of the street. Then the only other thing would be is, the traffic. Traffic is a nightmare, as everybody said, and we just wanna know what kind of modifications would have to be done to make sure that, you know, it's not gonna get any worse.
And they're going to have a traffic study done also.
Oh, yes.
Because that's going to be part of the site plan.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
And by the way, just generally, so if a use variance is granted, it's like a stutter step. So that means they have an opportunity to go think about the site plan. They're gonna have to do a bunch of stuff for the site plan, obviously. One of those things is to notice you good people again. So in other words, just like you got a notice here, presumably because you're within 200 feet, if they were given use variance relief, then they'd have to come back on the site plan, and again, they would have to notice everyone within 200 feet.
Well, the whole thing is, they're not going to improve the quality of life for us. I mean, we've
Not
been
at
there, we've been there for, my wife's family's been there since 1930. It was the Raiders and the Crossroads.
Well, it might be nice to be able to go back to 1930, but we're not gonna be able
Well, I
to.
know that, but
I
I
know.
mean.
No, I know.
But you're talking about improving the quality of life, and you're not going to for us. I mean, you know, it's just gonna be a major inconvenience for everybody that lives there
Yeah.
now.
Well, listen,
And there's no way to make it any better.
you said a mouthful. It's just, you know, the world's getting up busier and busier and more crowded, and where's it all gonna end?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public? Since I don't see anybody else from the public, do I have a motion to close the public portion of
So
the meeting?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other questions from the board?
I have one question, maybe it was addressed, maybe I just didn't, get the clarity on it, and that is, will there be signage, in regards to the apartment complex? Will there have any signage that's going out there on Delsey Drive? I was just thinking in terms of, you know, the visibility there, you know, as mentioned, it's very difficult to even maneuver in that particular area, and, if you're talking about signage, how is that going to affect that area?
So we would obviously to create, and I keep referring it to a community because it
Can you
is.
talk in the mic, please?
Because the plan is to create a community, so you would have to have an identification sign. One for someone to recognize, two for someone that was looking for the complex. The borough ordinances have very rigid ordinances for sign height, sign location, site distance, so it doesn't obstruct traffic and so forth. So some low level, what we call ground mounted signage identifying the site would be incorporated as part of the site plan, but not a huge, you know, billboard type of sign. That would not be the intent. It would be nothing more than an identity.
It's not a motel, so you don't want it to
Correct.
Correct.
look tacky like that.
Any other questions of the board? What's the pleasure?
Am I permitted to make a comment,
Go ahead.
clarification?
It's your application, Mr.
Go ahead.
DeSanto, you do whatever you like.
Yes. Just for clarification, for purposes of the record, I realize what the neighbors have said, and I just wanted to emphasize for the board, and I'm sure you're aware of it, there are 32 one-bedroom apartments. The likelihood of children and school buses, et cetera, with 32 one-bedroom is practically nil. Secondly, and also very important with respect to the traffic concerns and all that, compare an apartment complex as proposed to a Wendy's.
To a fast food restaurant or a gas station, it's a conditional use, we get it. And quite frankly, listen, you know, yeah, it's fine, that's great, thank you.
That's all, I just wanna take 1 minute.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's good.
It's a pleasure of the board.
I'm confused.
Now remember, this applicant's only before this board for a use variance relief. Any relief granted would include the use variance relief with the bulk variance as presently requested, but contingent upon and subject to a site plan review, where things may change slightly, but that's what's in front of you.
I'd like to, make a motion for people of the board, and that is that, we do grant the bulk variance use, and contingent with.
Can't hear you.
It's a, yeah, I think the
Can't
best
hear
thing.
me?
Yeah,
It's
we
fine.
can't hear you, you need to speak louder.
I would like to make a motion that we grant the bulk variance,
So it's the use variance with the bulk variance relief as requested,
variance, that's correct.
subject to a site plan review.
That's correct.
I think that's fundamentally what you're here for.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Well, we got it right, I think. So you're making that motion?
Yeah, I put the motion on the floor.
Well, there
Alright,
it is.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Harvey,
4.
Mr. Santor,
4.
Mr. Smith,
4.
Mr. Jimenez,
4.
Ms. Camiola, Mr. Noonan,
4.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, well,
We'll see you back.
happy holidays, stay well,
Yes, thank you.
everybody stay safe.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much.
We still have a big hump to go through as the site plan.
Alright, we don't see there's any reports.
Oh,
We have a workshop committee.
workshop, strangely enough, we discussed, the workshop was this one.
Okay.
Was this, so you heard it all. Do we have a resolution?
Solicitors report.
We do, well, Mr. Chairman, we have a resolution, and that would be for Gregory Bonfiglio, and you'll remember this was a young man who was looking to, build an outbuilding, a garage which exceeds your standard by, some feet. He had acquired the house, the existing garage falling apart, and looking to spruce the place up, so to speak.
Sounds good.
So did you do a motion and everybody
Yeah,
approve
do I have a
it?
motion to accept the resolution?
So moved.
All,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. You got any old business?
New old business?
New and old?
Mm.
Nothing? Our next meeting's what, January 20th?
January 20,
It's our
2022.
reorg. That's gonna be our reorg.
Alright. Do we have people that have to be sworn in?
Reorg, and we'll do business, Ms. Fanfarello, if we have some.
If we have some,
Cool.
still waiting for Burger King to come in, so maybe they'll come in at that time.
There you go.
We still,
We have a motion to adjourn.
wait a minute, did you ask for public comments? We still got public.
Oh, yeah, maybe she wants to say something.
Ma'am, do you have anything you would like to say? Okay.
Okay, all right. Well, we asked. All
There
right.
you go.
Well, there you go. Very nice, very nice. Bring us something.
Okay, now you can do these. I'll move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.